How would you ensure that there will be both affordable and quality housing for students and graduates in Bournemouth?
That's a difficult one for Bournemouth because the growth of Bournemouth has been quite great over the last 20 or so years. I mean, I've seen the growth of Bournemouth myself, and space is rapidly running out, and there's limited scope to expand beyond its present boundaries. So we really seriously have got to utilise the ground that we've already got. There's quite a large number still of old Victorian and Edwardian buildings, homes that are coming to the end of their life. So we've got to take to bring that forward. We've got to sort of take the opportunities to redevelop sites that these places were on, to create units that are affordable and provide adequate accommodation, particularly for younger people. So we've got to use existing sites, what we call brownfield sites as well. There's quite a bit of that in Bournemouth, and that's a policy that we must pursue in order to meet the demands of a question like that. But it's a difficult one. It's not an easy answer because housing is, an issue, and it needs to be addressed.
I don't know. I really don't know. On the way here in the car, there was a very interesting article on this issue on Woman's Hour, because I got a lift here, and they were talking about this, how affordable housing isn't just an issue for students, it's an issue for huge swathes of the population. And one of the statements that was quite horrifying was, if you don't live in the southeast or London, you're not likely to be able to give an inheritance that's going to make your children beyond the property ladder, or help them sort of develop their property owning. There's an obsession with property ownership, but in this town, because it's a popular town, rent prices have gone up as well. It's a huge issue. I think we've gone out of control. We've got £1 million houses in Sandbanks, and then you've got other property owners trying to chase that in some sense. So rent controls could be it, but that's a bit authoritarian. Building more housing, I think, is key, is pivotal. There are public resources available to do that, but it's not going to. We can't borrow ourselves out of this hole. I think we need an attitude change about renting, but in short, I don't know. It's a huge question. Doesn't mean that I don't think it needs to be dealt with there.
I have 3 children. My eldest daughter went to university, and she went to a university college where there was no halls of residence, and so I suffered as a parent from day one of having her in a house that had been converted simply to students, and that was simply by turning all the rooms into bedrooms, and it wasn't suitable. I believe that we should have purpose-built student accommodation in the town, and I would encourage our local council to build as much, because that is therefore then built for your use and for your needs, and it would also hopefully free up some of the housing which we need for families. But we have a lot of land that is brown sites that we should be building on, and there's some very close to this university which we should encourage people. So I'm all in favour of building. Now, it's not because I'm in the building industry. I genuinely believe we need more affordable housing for not only students but young families.
Well, this is where the strategy comes in. If you're going to have 2 great universities such as we have in Bournemouth, and indeed other academic institutions, you've got to have somewhere for the students to live. And I'm pleased to see that there is a proper programme involved with the council and indeed in the private sector to make sure that there is the accommodation there, the campus accommodation, but also there is in the private sector as well. And the Prime Minister has been very clear about advancing the size of the private sector to make sure that there is the housing there for students to be able to come in and have affordable but also quality accommodation as well. So I'm pleased that there is a good programme here in Bournemouth, but there's always more we can do.
Okay, this is another question that has come up quite a few times, and there are problems with housing, with student housing in the Bournemouth area. We have a situation where students are paying a premium for substandard housing in a lot of cases. What I would say is that there's so much to cover on this. We used to have a Rent Control Act in this country up until it was thrown out in the 80s by Margaret Thatcher, which would stop landlords exploiting their tenants. I think it's worth having a look at that again. There's also a scheme in Bristol that it's a voluntary scheme for landlords to join, where they guarantee a certain level of a certain standard of accommodation. I think that would also help locally. Also, holding landlords to account is important. That's not happening enough as far as I'm concerned.
I'd like to see more student accommodation built. The other one is another point of mine is this land banks, where you get brownfield sites that are not built on for years and years. Now the classic one in Bournemouth East is the old railway coal yard by the Portman Hotel, which was actually the old Boscombe railway station. That massive piece of land has not been built on, well, since they took the railway away. So, and that's got to be, what, 20, 30 years ago. And there are other pockets of land like that, and we need definitely more affordable. It's got to be affordable student accommodation, and be careful of certain landlords.
Very difficult. However, we are missing an opportunity. I wrote a paper I tried to present to my party 2 years ago, which I would, if I get into Parliament, I will be pushing hard. Did you know that 700,000 houses are empty and vacant in the UK? Of that, 300,000 of those houses have been empty for more than 6 months. Now, I believe what we should do, we should map out and find out exactly where all those properties are. We should then get money from central government to actually be given to the local authorities to employ 3 estate agents to go around and value all those properties. At the same time, the local authority can, through the land registry, can actually identify who owns those properties. They can be written to. The estate agents can go in and give a valuation of the actual property, which will not be very much because it's probably in a very bad state. And we can basically send builders in to basically renovate them and either sell them or put them back into the rental situation, and hopefully increase council houses which have been sold off. And I've run out of time.
Well, again, the question is, once you're a graduate, you're in the same sort of category as everybody else. So the question comes down to how do you ensure affordable housing? You cannot buck the market. Anything that I say to that, we're going to give students or graduates special privileges to buy houses and things, that's just a platitude. It's a nonsense. It can't actually happen in the real world. All I can say is what we have to do is ensure that the housing supply is increased and the demand is reduced. The only way we can do that is getting a proper grip on immigration. We can get students hopefully to get good salaries in their chosen careers by reducing the competition, by reducing the amount of people chasing the same job. Anything else, anything that people focus on as a minor point of it, is really just a politician trying to buck the market. And I don't know whether you've ever heard the phrase, politicians have a 100% failure record in trying to buck markets, and they do. Sooner or later, the market will always win. We have to change the macro fundamentals of the economy.
Okay, we need to address the issue of landlords. At the moment, they have way too much power and they can basically do what they want. And there's different legislations that the Greens are looking to employ to kind of fence that in and make it stop escalating so far. But it's not just an issue for students, it's also an issue for everyone else that's renting in this area. It's really, really expensive. And we need to address it, otherwise people will move away. It's really not that different to London prices, but we don't get paid anything near the same. The difference is too big and we need to address it now. It's a really big problem in this area, I think.